Everyone. In this video, we're going to be building a simple web application. Basically, I was thinking about kind of project that we could build whilst learning our web development, right? So this project is going to encompass both JavaScript, CSS, and then HTML, which are the basic languages that you are going to need if you want to become a web developer. Okay, and so the project that we're going to be building is not anything super complicated. It's basically fine-tuned towards the upcoming holidays. So I was thinking that we are going to build like a timer, which basically gives us a countdown to Christmas. Let's say it's 30 seconds to Christmas. Then when the timer is up, we'll base oh, the page will play the Christmas jingle, jingle bell, jingle bell, jingle on the way, that kind of song, right? And so it's going to be fun. Let's get started. So first of all, you need a text editor. I'm going to be using Notepad. This is super easy. We all have Notepads on our computer, so just click on the start button, then search for Notepad, open it up. I'm going to basically go to File, go to Save As, then I'm going to go to Desktop. I'm going to save this, but I'm going to save this. Select all files, then I'll just call this uh, Christmas HTML. Okay, we're only going to need this single file, so it's created here. I'm going to double click to open that up in my browser. I'm going to resize this so that I can have the two windows opened and we'll be able to see what we are writing, right? So basically, the first thing we are going to need is our HTML basic structure, right? So if you don't know the HTML basic structure, you can look up for it on my channel. I have it. So first of all, we are going to just declare our doc type. So HTML with the language of English. Then we're going to close the HTML tag. We're going to have our head tag. We're going to close that, give it a title, and we're going to call this our Christmas jingle, right? So let's close the title, right? Now, basic stuff. We're going to open up our body, close the body tag. So we are going to be using JavaScript, so we are going to need a script tag. I'm not going to separate things. I'm going to put everything in one single file so that anyone who is beginning can basically follow along. The same applies to our CSS. We are going to put everything in one file, so we'll have the CSS here. Now let's add our character sets. We're going to set everything to UTF-8, which is the basic standard for character encoding. So we just say character set equals to what? UTF-8. Then we'll close that. We should also set our viewports. This is useful in some cases. This is good when you are dealing with responsiveness. So add the viewport. We're not going to be diving deep into this anyway, but it's good to just add it. Set the width to be equals to what? Twice width. Set the initial scale to be 1.0. And we can close the meta tag, right? So that's about it. We have basic things, nothing too crazy. And remember that every thing that you are going to be writing should be inside the body tag here. So your content should be here. Save that. I go back and I refresh. We get our hello world. So simple stuff, right? Now, what I plan to create is it's going to be very simple. We're going to have a card, like a box here, and then we're going to have uh, two buttons. Well, technically three buttons because we want to have a play button, a pause button, and a reset button. So when you open it up, the only thing that will be visible will be the play and then the reset button. Click on play, the timer will start counting. If you reach the time that we set, let's say 30 seconds, then it will play the Christmas jingle. Okay, whilst it's playing, the pause button will be there, and then you can basically tap on the pause button to pause the timer. Okay, and then you can click on reset to reset the timer back to 0. So that's what we're going to be doing. So first of all, obviously, since we are creating a card, we need to set our background color so that it will be anything other than white, because I want my card to be white, and so if it is white and the background is white, you're not going to be able to see it. So to make things simple, I'll just target the body, and I'm going to set everything to 0, the spacing and everything, margins, pardon, we're going to set everything to 0 so that we can work with the body. Okay, and so in order to remove the spacing, we'll set margin 0, set pattern to 0, then we'll set the height to 100% of the view height of the device. Then we'll take out any overflow. Overflow is when you have elements that that you resize or that you size up and then it's going overboard, like it's going beyond the screen. Sometimes it automatically picks enable scrolling for you. You do not want that right now, so I'm just going to hide everything. It means that this will be clipped. Anything that goes outside of our styling will basically be clipped out. So overflow helps with that. And well, what am I doing? I'm going to target the body. Then we'll paste it in there. So we'll target the body. We'll put our code in there. I want to make sure that everything is readable. That's why I'm doing all this. So we have that. Now I'm going to go back to the body. Because I'm going to be creating a card, I want to make sure that it's in a container. So we use div to create containers in HTML, div tag, and then each container can have an ID and a class. In this case, I want to give it a class card, which will be the identifier that we'll use when we are doing our styling. Okay. Now, inside the card, we are going to have a title, basically showing the countdown, the timer, and maybe a bit of a heading, like some text to make things a little bit more meaningful. Okay, so we can just add another div here, and we'll call this our holiday timer. Close the div tag, and let's add some title like let's see H1. I'll call this my countdown, and let's add some text to tell the person to wait for the jingle to play. Basically, when they this helps explain things. Just some text for more context. So tell the user to wait for the jingle. Then we can close our paragraph, save that. If I refresh, you see all the text, right? So this is great. Now, what I also want to do is I want to show the timer. And so we need to have a div that will be holding the timer. Okay, so we'll add a div. And we'll just say timer. Let's say the timer is 30 seconds. Something like this. Close the div. Then we need to give this an ID and a class. We could use the ID later on to handle our JavaScript events. Okay, so I'll give it an ID of timer and a class. Give it another. The class name could be the same, but let's use something different. Give it timer display. Save this. Now we also need to create our buttons. We need to have the buttons show up. And remember that we are going to have 3 buttons. We're going to have the play button, the pause button, and then the reset button. So I would like to group this inside a single container. So I'll use a div. Then in here, I'll basically have my buttons. So how do we add a button? Use button. You can just say A, use the button like that. Pause. Now we are set. Now, of course, we need to give this IDs to help us later on. JS. Then I will give this E pause button. Give this one to another ID of the set button. Fresh. We have everything. This is great. Now, what should we do now? Let's start styling things up. We have the basic elements that we need right now. So I need to make things look a little bit better so that it can reflect what I really want to show. Okay, so we're going to use CSS to decorate things. Now, the first thing I want to do is because I want to create a card, I want to um, basically change the background color from white to a different color. So I'm going to make it a gradient color. Gradient color helps coloring. It shows you a beautiful color from a combination of two or more colors. Okay, so I'm going to give my body tag a background color, and I'm going to use background. I want to use linear gradient, and with the linear gradient, it allows you to define how you want the colors to be combined. Okay, you could use degrees, or you could use angles, right? So you could use angles, or you could just use like directional keywords, like let's say to the right or to the left. So you could start with, let's say, to the right. Like, I think, let me just show you instead of just explaining. So you could start something like you could say, let's say you want it to start an angle of 135 degrees, right? Now, what color do you want to have as your first color? Let's say green. What color do you want to have as your second color? Let's say cyan color, right? So if I set this up, if I save with Control S, go back and refresh, you get something like this, right? This is gradient color. This is using like linear gradients to basically set things up. Combines the two colors that we've given it at this degrees. Okay. So with that being said, let's start styling our card to make it look like an actual card. So I'm going to target my card, and in order to target a CSS with class, use dot. So use dot card, open up our brackets, then we'll start by giving our card a background, right? So we want to have, let's use a white background for the card. This will make it easier and I don't have to worry about a lot of things. So just give it a background color white. So I'll do something like this, white, then I'll refresh. We have a white background. But you see, this looks like it is cutting off from the top, but it's not. So the reason why this is happening is because of the alignment of the card itself. So I want to make sure that the card is aligned at the center of the what of the device. In order to do that, we need to first target the parent body here. I want to make sure that every element in the body tag is at the center. Okay. If we had multiple things, you wouldn't want to use the body. You might want to just create another div and then put the card inside, and you can just style that div to be at the center. But to keep things simple, I'm going to go back to the body. I'm going to set the display to flex. I'm going to justify content. I want all the content to be at the center. Okay. I'll save and refresh. We have something like this, right? Then I want to align items. So fresh again, and then we have that. You can see that, right? So we have our card. This is basic card. It doesn't look that nice. And so I would like to add some pattern to it. The pattern will basically give us some spacing around the elements. So let's give it a pattern of, let's say, 3 pixels. Go back and refresh. This is way too small, so I don't want to be using pixels. Let's use rem. Let's say we give it a 3.5 rem. Sorry, 2.5 rem maybe. You know what? Let's use 3 rem and see what we got. Nah, this is too much. 5. This is better, right? Now you can see that we have somewhat of a card, but let's make it a little bit more nicer, okay? What I want to do is I want to the corners I want to make it round, and so what do I do? How do I make it round? I need to change the border radius. So border radius, we'll just set that to let's say 20 pixels. Also, you don't have to use pixels, you can use percentages. I could change this to 50% and it will look like a circle. See? But we don't want that. Let's use the pixels. Let's set it to 25 pixels. Fresh. So this looks better, okay? Now let's give our card some width. Give it a width of maybe 320. Let's give it 300 and see how it looks. It's not too big. Uh, Pixels, fresh. So this looks okay. Let's align the items. Right now it's aligned to the left side. Let's align them to the text to center, okay, to make things centered. This at the center. This is good. Now we want to give this some border. We want to add a border around it. Make it look like more Christmas things, right? Let's give it a golden color. It looks like a Christmas tree. So in order to set a border, use border, and you can set the pixels size. Let's use 4 pixels. We want it to be solid, and we want to use which color do we want to use? Let's use gold. Christmas tree and gold, right? This is good. Now let's set the position. We don't want it to be fixed. Let's set the position to relative. This makes it more adaptive. So what else do we need to do to make it look a little bit more better? Okay, let's add some shadow to the card, okay? So I'm going to give this some box shadow, and uh, let's say the top of the 0, have 15 pixels for the bottom. Now we have 35 pixels. So with box shadows, we are going to need 2 colors, right? And you said how you want the shadow to appear, okay? So right now, if I set this up like this, and this is going to look very weird. So I don't want it to, I want the shadow to be a lot more controlled, okay? So I'm going to set the color. I'm going to use some let's use RGB again, but this time around I want to add some channels to it. Okay, so I'll use RGBA, which is just a combination of red, green, and then blue colors to make some colors. So I'm going to be using black, which is usually like the normal color for a shadow. So we'll use a black shadow or a dark shadow, sorry, and we'll start with the top should be 0, 0, 0. Okay, top left, right, like basically we set everything to 0 to get a dark color, and the channel we're going to set it to 0.3. And so depending on the size of the channel, you are not really going to get anything. You can set it to 0.0 to get a complete transparency, like to get a completely transparent color. You can set it to 0.5 to get a 50% transparency. Or you can set it to 1. In this case, I'm setting to 0.5. and I want to do a similar thing. So I want to combine two different shadows. You can see that we still have a shadow, it's just not too visible. So I'm going to add another shadow. So we're going to have two shadows. We're going to combine two dark colors to give us a proper shadow. Okay, so 0, 5 pixels. We'll give this one 15 pixels. We want to use the same RGB again, and it's also going to be black. And this time around, we'll just give it a 0, 15, 35 pixels. Go through that. This gives us a proper shadow. This looks nice. So if I want to trick that shadow a little bit, I can just right click, inspect the element, go down here, and you can set this up a little bit if you want. But this is okay. All right, so this looks good. This looks good enough. Okay. So the next thing is let's style our buttons. We want to target the buttons. So our body tag will target the button this way. And obviously I want the buttons to be definitely I want the buttons to be nicer than their current way, like their current state. I want to remove the borders. I want to make it a bit larger. I want to add some round corners to it. And so let's do that. We'll make the border none. Just basically remove any border that you have on the button. So you see that we don't have borders anymore. So this is great. And we want to add some pattern to it. Top beam 12 pixels, then 24 pixels. Fresh. This makes it look a little bit better. Want to let's make the text bold. Let's make it bold. You can do that by adding font weight. So you could set it to 500. You set it to 500 and fresh. Let's make it 600. Save, fresh. This is better. Let's increase the font size. Font size, let's say maybe 10 pixels. This might be too big, but let's see. Oh, okay, this is okay. Right, so let's make this flex. Let's make this a flex box. This will help us with the alignment of the items and the manipulation, right? Okay, so we're gonna set the display to what flex, like the way we did with our body. Set the display to flex. We want to align the items to the center, and we also want to just add some gap between them. Okay, so with the gap, we could say maybe 10 pixels. Fresh start. Now this looks weird, right? Of course. And the reason why it looks weird is because we are targeting all buttons. Okay, so all the buttons here, each button will be given like we made a flex box. So we don't want to do that. So let's style the container. So we'll call this maybe our button controls. Controls. Then I'll go back to my styles, add controls. Then I'll basically set the display on the controls to flex. Then with this one, I will align everything towards center. I'll just justify the contents, set it to center, go back, refresh, and see that everything flows. So this is adding a flex box around the wrapper, okay, the wrapper here. So that's why we are able to have that. So this looks good. And there's an issue. You can see that the buttons have been joined in a way. I don't want that. So I'll add a gap to it too. And then let's make this maybe 8 pixels. Fresh. Then you have some space in between them, which is great. But we have another problem. As you can see that the buttons right now, they are all the same color, but we don't want that. And so let's make one of them our primary color. Obviously, the play button should be our primary color, right? Let's make the play button our primary color, and then we'll have a secondary color. The secondary color should be, let's say, our reset button. So what I want to do is I want to give the play button class. I'll call it primary color. I'll call it primary button, and then I can just target that and style it. So call this one primary dash button. There we go. Now I can go and I'll target that in my CSS. What I want to do is I want to give it a different color. So I'll use background color. Let's make this red. I'll close the curly bracket, save it. You see that we have a red, but the text is black. So let's change the text color to white. Okay, fresh. Uh, there we go. We change the color to white. We also want to set a shadow around us to make it look a little, to make it look like it's floating. So add a box shadow. Top should be 0, 4 pixels, and 10 pixels. Which color should we use? Let's use our RGBA again. Let me just set, let's say 200, 36, 38, and maybe 0.3. See if I don't like the color, I can just change it up. Okay. Yes. So the shadow is there, it's just not too visible. Check, you can see that we have the shadow right there, right? All right, so that does it. So let's create another one for our secondary color. Our secondary button, which will be our reset button here. We can just leave it like that for now. Okay. So let's see what is next. We basically have a good card here, but this text, like this holiday timer, I want to decorate this. Okay. So I don't want it to look too ordinary. So let's go target this. Let's give it a class. We'll call this maybe holy decoration, like that. Grab the class. Then we will go to our CSS again, add a dot, and we'll start our styles for our holy decoration. So how do I want this holy decoration to be? First of all, I want to move it upwards so that it will be like it's around here on top of the card. So that's the case, we want to make sure that the position is absolute. Okay, it will be fixed. No matter where the card is, it should definitely be at the top, not inside of there like that. So I also want to make it bold, so I'm going to go with a font weight, just bold, refresh. There we go. So this is bolder, moved. This is good. Now let's change the font size. Okay, font size. Let's use maybe 1 rem. It's okay. What else should we add to this? We definitely want it to move upwards. So let's change the spacing at the top. We're going to use negative number to basically minus it out so that it moves towards the top, right? So let's say maybe 25 pixels. Save that. So this moves upwards, which is good, but it looks like it's way too up. But this is okay. Let's add some padding to it. Add a padding. Top should be 5 pixels, maybe a little bit. Let's add 50 pixels of it to it so that this looks okay, right? Yeah. So let's give it a background color. We want it to look like a button or something. So let's give it a background color. Let's make this red. Now we're building something like a Christmas tree. Now I want to also change the border radius. So I want to change the border radius to something like 20 pixels. There we go. Now you have to move it towards the center, okay? In order to do that, we need to manipulate it from the left side. So let's move it, let's say 50% so that it'll be at the center, okay? So I'll just say at the left side, want to give some spacing and want it to take center. Save that, refresh. Ooh, that's too much. Let's say 45. Oh, 40. Man, let's make that 35, 30%. 35 will do. This will definitely be at the center, I think. There we go. Nice. All right. So let's give it some, taking out the spacing. What else? What else? Let's give it some shadow. Let's give it some shadow. Let's give it some dark shadow. So give it a box shadow. 0 here with 4 pixels and 6 pixels. We're going to be using what? RGB again. Basically black color. So you do not need to worry about that. Add that up. Refresh. This adds a little bit of it there, but not too much. The text is dark. We should definitely change the color to white. Now let's refresh this. I want to apply some transformation to the text. So I'm going to use transform and we're going to add a translation. Basically adding a 2D or 3D transformation to the element. So in this case, the transformation we want it to be on the x-axis. So we're going to use a translation on the x-axis to move the element from its current position. So let's do that. Let's translate it to the x-axis. Let's say by 50%. So x-axis by 50%. Let's see how this will affect it. And you see, if I do that, this will give me the chance to just make sure that this is the left side is always fixed. Okay, at what? 50%. So I'm going to negate this. Okay, then I'll return this to 50% left. This will make sure that it's absolutely at the center, and so we don't need to worry about manipulating the spacing from the left side again. So this is good. This is good. Okay. So what about our text here? Wait for the jungles. Let's add some style into it too. So I'll call this. What class should I give it? Let's see subtitle. Go back to my CSS. Add that, and I want to give it a font size of this time around. Let's make it less than 1 rem, so maybe 1.9 rem. That makes it a bit smaller, right? Let's give it some color. This time around, I want to use 6. This makes it gray. This is okay. Let's give some spacing from the bottom. So we'll give it a margin from the bottom, and let's make this 5 pixels. No, let's increase that to 25. Widen things up. Good. Okay. Now, what about our countdown here? Let's apply some styling to it too. So we target the H1, and we're going to give it color. Let's make it red. Let's give it a margin on the top. Let's make it 10 pixels. What about from the bottom? Yeah, what about from the bottom? Let's refresh. So this is okay. Let's give it a margin bottom. Let's make this pixels, but we want to make sure that the font size is scaled a bit to, let's say, 2.5, 2.5 rem. There we go. This increases it for us. So this is great. I don't really need to worry about any other thing now. So let's take a look at our timer, right? Let's add some style into it too. It's still so generic. So let's add some style into the timer. So we'll target the class. Pick up. So the timer. Let's pick up this font size, make it a bit bigger. Say font 4M, and then we're gonna refresh. This is looking more like a clock now, huh? Okay, so let's make it bold. Give it a font weight. Make it bold. There we go. You can also give it a color. But this one, let's make it green. I mean, we can't just have red and yellow all over the place. Just green, right? So let's see. Let's add some margins to it to get some spacing. Use 20 pixels. Add 0 here. What? Let's just leave it at 20 pixels. This is good. We could also try, you know what, this looks good for now, right? Let's add some icons to this, okay? Like our holiday timer. We want to add some icons to this. So let's try and look for the Christmas tree. I don't know if I can find some in my computer, but press on the Windows key and period on your computer. This will bring up the emojis of the Christmas tree, right? I'm going to just set that here. Great. Copy this. Of course, under normal circumstance, you could use what do we call it? Use font icons. Use something like font awesome. Use hero icons. There are a lot of them. So this looks good. Yeah, this looks good. Okay, so what about our buttons? Let's add some icons to our buttons too to make it look more actual action buttons. So press on the Windows key again and then your full stop or period. I want to search for play. Nice. Set that there. The pause. You should set pause. Put that there. The reset. I want to have reset. Let's just reload. Oh, this is good. Now I'll add spacing. Spacing. So I'll save this. Refresh. So we have some icons to this, right? Great. But I want to add some span to this. Keep the icons inside the span so that target it later on if we want to. This is good. Going to refresh. There we go. So this is better. Now let's try to add some JavaScript into the mix. We've been taking around with HTML and CSS. This our card looks gorgeous. It's not the best card, but yeah, right. Anyway, so let's get onto the JavaScript. First, we need to set our timer. We want this to be to reflect actual seconds when we press play. Let's say the initial we want to start at the 30-second countdown. So we set our initial countdown to 30 seconds. Press on play to count down from 30 seconds. When we have zero, we basically what? Play the song. Talk about how we can put the song into the HTML. For now, let's look into that. Okay. So I'm going to define a constant variable, and this will be our initial timer. And we'll just set that to 30 seconds. Here, so this is how you define a constant in JavaScript. Constants are unchangeable. You don't change them at runtime or anywhere. So once you define a constant, it's going to remain there. Okay. Now I'm going to create a new variable, and this variable is going to basically uh, take our initial timer, let's say the 30 seconds, and keep a copy of it. So let time left to be equals to what? Initial timer here. Just copy this. Go. So basically, this will be the same as 30 seconds if we try to check it out. I can do that by using log left fresh. Right click on the browser and I go to what? Inspect. I go to the console. You see 30 seconds, right? So that's what I'm talking about. Use that. Now that we have that, we also want to have what? A time interval that will take care of This will help us in our calculation so that we'll be able to know the time that is left between the time interval, like from our initial time and then the time that is left. So if we set 30 seconds, how many seconds is left, right? From and like what's the interval between our initial timer and then where we are going. So if we set to 30 seconds, our time interval, we just set that to null. Null means that it's just an empty variable. Like, it's just going to be defined in memory, but it will not hold any variable. It will not hold any value. Let me put it that way. So we're going to say maybe time interval. We'll set that to null, and we also want to know whether our application is like whether it's running, is it actually running, or is it not running? Like, is our play button, if someone press on the play button, we want to know whether the timer is still running or it has finished running. So we need to keep that in mind so that later on we can use this to check, and then we'll choose to either play or pause the song. Okay, so we're going to say let is running. The initial is going to be false. Obviously, we have true or false, which are Boolean variables. In this case, if this is false, just means that right now it's not running, it's static. So the timer will not be showing up. Okay. So with that being said, now we need to be able to figure out a way to interact with our buttons here and the content here, like the text here. We need to find a way to be able to interact with them. And so the only way we can do that is through this JavaScript code that we are writing. We are yet to write. Okay. And so I need to define some functions. Now, what are functions? Functions are just pieces of code that hosts that performs some action, basically making it reusable, right? And so right now this code is not reusable. If I want to reuse this, I'll have to copy and paste it again. But with functions, you just define your code, your function. You define a block of code, and then whenever you call it or you reference it, it is able to do that. What it is able to perform whatever logic that you have inside the function at any point in time. Okay, so I want to have some functions. One of my functions is going to be what? To be a reset timer. That one is going to be responsible for resetting everything. It is going to stop the timer. It's going to stop the audio if it is playing. It's going to reset everything to zero. And then we need to have another function that will be able to what? That will call anytime someone press on the play or the pause button. It will either play or it will pause the audio. Okay, it will either start the timer or it's just pause the audio for us. So we need to define these things inside our JavaScript. So how do we do that? In order to define it, a function in JavaScript, you use what we call function. The function keyword comes in. So I'm going to call function. I'm going to call this, let's say, reset timer. Find that one first, and then you basically bring in whatever logic you want to be done whenever the reset timer is called. Okay, so right now I'll leave it as empty. Okay, by putting these lines there, whatever I write here will not be shown. It's called comments in programming. I also want to call to create another function, which will basically be toggling the being able to toggle play or pause. Okay, so that whenever someone click on pause or play, we do something. So I'm going to create a function. I'll call it toggle play pause buttons. So this is good. Keep this simple. We're not going to put anything there for now. We just define the functions, and then we'll, after defining the functions that we need, we'll then insert our audio. Then we can continue with the rest. So we have our toggle buttons. that will be responsible for handling what? Toggle logic. Toggle logic will be here. We have our reset timer, and right, so we're going to leave this for now. We should probably create a function that's responsible for just pausing the time so that we can separate the logic and everything. But first of all, let's see how we can insert audio into our what? Our web page. So we're going to look for our audio, and I'm going to download. Let's look for Christmas jingle. Let's all right, so we're going to download this. Click on download. Download the file. So it has some license. I'll download that, but just download the file. Now we have the file in our downloads. See, right? I'm going to call that. I'm just going to rename that to our jingle. I'll move this to my desktop. That's where I have my project. So it's in the same place, not in a folder, nothing. So let's go back and open up our code. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to insert the audio into the HTML. I'm going to show you how to do that. So we're going to move outside of our div tag here. Then we're going to insert the audio. So how do you insert an audio? You bring in the audio tag. Like any other tag, it has a closing tag. Now what I want to do is I want to add the source. So bring in a source. Then we'll add an src equals to our jingle.mp3 and the type. So you have to look at the extension of the file here. This is an mp3 file. You can see the extension. Okay. If you are not sure of your extension, if you're anywhere on Windows 11, just click on View, go to Show More, and then just what? Make sure this is checked. File name extensions and to be shown. So this is an mp3 file. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to call this audio/mp3, and then I'll close that up. Then if this is not able to play, we want to display some useful information for the user. And so we're just going to tell them that your browser does not support audio element. This is a fail-safe statement. You will not see this unless the browser is not able to play the audio. I'll refresh this page. I'm not really seeing anything, right? Right. Now, what I want to do is I want to add an ID to the audio. So let's give this an ID. I'm going to give it an ID of, let's say, jingle audio. Save that up. Refresh. Right. This audio will stay hidden. But now, thanks to JavaScript, we'll be able to manipulate and play the audio from our browser. Okay. And so let's see. How do we interact with the buttons in JavaScript? That's the first question, right? And so JavaScript have what we call DOM. The DOM basically allows you to manipulate elements on the web page, giving you a lot more versatility in web development. You're able to basically query and select anything in our browser. And thanks to that, we can manipulate, we can change text, we can change the color of text, we can apply CSS, we can animate objects using JavaScript. So it's a very powerful language. So it's good to learn it. In this case, we're going to be able to use it to interact with our audio file. First of all, how do I know that this audio thing actually plays, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to define a variable that will allow us to interact with the audio tag that we've just added. Okay. And so I'm going to use the ID be able to what communicate with the HTML elements using JavaScript. Just like the way we're able to style objects and elements using CSS, classes, and IDs, we can still do the same thing with JavaScript. And so I'm going to define a constant. I'll call this audio. This will be equals to, we have a built-in document. This will grab the current document, the current web page, and we're able to grab elements from the web page using either the ID or the class. And so I can say get elements by ID, and I can just bring in the ID. Okay. This will grab the audio at the audio tag. Okay. And so if I wanted to do if I do something like audio dot play and refresh, I'm not getting anything. Let's see. What do we have here? So it's not found. Weird. Alright, so for some reason my browser is not allowing me to play this using JS, which is weird. So let's add something like controls, elements, and refresh. This available. Here. So what is going on? Seems my browser is not allowing me to play not allowing me to play the audio using JavaScript. So this is really weird, but let's see if we can catch the error that's causing this. Not so we're gonna say audio.play, then we're going to just catch the return error. Let's use an arrow function, and we want to console log the error. Fresh. Oh, so it's not allowed. So the weird thing here is that my browser doesn't allow me play to interact directly with the audio using JS. So I have to find a new way to do the playing, okay? And so what do we do here? So another way we could do this is we'll basically grab the audio file here. Okay, I'm going to take this out and I'm going to create a new constant. Okay, I'll call this my audio file. Then I'll just save it. Okay, so this will hold the path to the audio file. So what I can do now is I can create basically I can say okay, the play button is clicked. So for now, just to test this out, I'm going to grab the play button too, so I'm just going to say const play button. Then I'm going to grab that using my JavaScript document.get elements by ID, and the ID here is going to be our play button ID. Okay. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to try to play the audio. Click on play, right? For now, we're not going to interact with the timer or anything, but I'm going to just play the audio. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say if the play button is clicked. Okay. So I will just say play button. We are going to check on event listener. The event is clicked. Then if something like that happens, then we're just going to call a function here. Then in here, we'll create a new audio object. Call that audio. Then we can just pass our audio file to it. Okay. So we'll just pass our audio file to it. And close that up. So now I'm going to try to play this again. See if I can catch any error. Okay. Let's use the error function to keep things shorter. So this time around, stop playing audio. Then we're just gonna pass it right there. It's okay. Weird. Oh yeah, that's our catch, right? Audio, play, catch the error. There we go. So no issues here. There we go. You can see that it actually plays now, right? Which is good. So what I want to do now is, you see, I'm going to grab our reset and our pause button too. Just grab the pause button, reset button. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So now we basically have all our buttons in action. Now what I want to also do is see the pause button. It has to be hidden by default. It will only show up when we click on play. So I'm going to add a class here. I'll call that hidden. Okay. So any element that has the hidden class will be what? Made, like it will not appear. It will be there, but it will not be shown. So I'll go back here and I'll target the hidden class. I'll just change the display to none. And in order to make sure that this is obeyed, we are going to add or import on clause to it. Go back and refresh. That is gone. So this is what we want, right? Now let's get back to our JavaScript. We now want to let's work with our timer here, okay? We want to show the timer. So how are we gonna handle that? Okay, first of all, we need to be able to grab content from the card, right? So we definitely need the card. So I'm going to create another constant card. Then I'm just going to grab the element. This time around, instead of using an ID, I'll use a query selector, which basically allow me to query elements using the class or the ID. So this time around, we're using the card. Okay. So we also need to basically, we need to format the timer here, okay? So first of all, we need to be updating it. We need this to be running. So how do we do that? First, let's create a function called update display. On the update display, we are going to handle the displaying of the time. So I want to take a look at the, I'll need the number of minutes that we have. Then I'll need to take a look at the seconds. That way, I can calculate the seconds based on the what? The constants given, right? I can basically uh, I can basically be updating this. I can basically make this to be updating by default based on the time that's been calculated. Okay, so first of all, we want to know the minutes. In order to know the minutes that's left, we need to take a look at the time that's left. Okay, we need to take a look at the time that's left here, and then we'll just divide that by 60. Okay, because we have 60 seconds in a minute. Okay, then we need to look at our seconds. That one we'll take a look at the time that's left, then mod 60. Now, what this mod operator does is going to give us, if we divide the time left by 60, what will be the remainder? Okay, so assuming that the time left here was 2, if we divide it by 60, the remainder will be 0, right? It will give us an exact remainder. There won't be any remainder. So let's say 2 divided by 4. If I did something like 2 mod 4, the answer will be 0. Basically, but if I did something like 2 mod 5, the answer will be 1. This will just return the remainder. Okay, so that's what we're trying to look at. So we're trying to calculate the seconds that's left from the division of the time that we had here. That's our initial time divided by the what? Number of seconds, which is 60 seconds. Okay, so now the timer is just going to be what? We're just going to take a we're just going to put the seconds together. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, for one, I could just say that the timer should be, let's say, 00. We want the timer to look something like 0, 0, 0, and then the seconds, right? So if it was 30 seconds, this will be 30, 40 seconds, or 40 or 50, like in that order. And so what we are going to do is we can say we want the timer to be, let's put this inside a variable. Let's say our formatted time. Then we want this to be 00, then maybe the seconds that we have, right? So we can have seconds. But you can see that this is going to give us issues later on, because what happens if the seconds is less than 10, right? If the seconds is less than 10, we want to add an extra 0 to the seconds, so that if the seconds that's given is, let's say, 5, it's 5 seconds, we don't just want to write 5, we want to append 0 to the beginning, so that's 0, 5, right? So what we can do is we can also use what? Formatted strings. Instead of just adding things together like this, we could use formatted strings. And we use formatted strings this way. So I'll do something like this. Then I can just say, I can put expressions in here. This is a seconds variable. that we'll put there. Okay, we'll have our seconds, but if the seconds is less than 10, we want to add a 0 to it. Okay, else we will not add any 0 to it. So we're going to add an expression here. The expression is this. What we are going to do is, if the seconds is less than 10, okay, if this is true, then we want to add a 10 to it. We want to add a 0 to it, else we don't want to add anything. This will just append the 0 to the seconds that we have. Okay, now we want to replace the seconds that we have here in our HTML. Want to replace this text with the one that has been calculated or that's been formatted from our update way. So how do we do that? We use the text content. So we need to grab the element. We need to grab the element using our JavaScript. Then we can set it up. So I can create another constant. I'll call this, let's say, our timer display. Then I'm gonna call this document get elements. Our element has an ID, right? So we can just go grab the ID. Has an ID of timer, right? So we'll get our timer display. And in here, I can just say timer display dot what. In order to set the text, we just say text content. Now we'll replace it with what? Our formatted time here. Okay. There's a lot. Refresh. Let's check our console to make sure that we don't have any errors. We have a type error. Get element is not a function. Okay. Get element by ID. So typo. Refresh. It's gone. So we don't have any errors. This is good now. But you see, because all that we wrote here is in a function, we will not actually see this take any effect anywhere. And so it's just going to be there, like nothing has changed. So in order for this to take effect, we'll have to call the update display function. So I'm going to go here down and I'll call the function. This is how we call a function. Then I'll refresh. Nothing is happening, right? Okay. So since nothing is happening, what do we do next? Now, how do we know that this is actually being called, right? How do we know that our function is being called? Once we can just console log our timer display or formatted time instead. Right? Sure. Refresh. You see that we actually have it here, right? But there's some spacing. Well, spacing here. There we go. I'll take it off. It looks. There we go. So this is okay. So we know that our function is working. We just need a way to make sure that this is updated live, right? So how are we going to do that? Now we need to call what we call time interval. We need to set a time interval. In JavaScript, there's a function that you can use to basically call element based on a time interval, based on a time that has been set. And so let's say you want this function to be called after every 1,000 milliseconds, right? You can do that. And so you do that using the time interval function. So we're going to use the set time interval function. We're going to use this basically all the methods so that it will be doing the calculation for us. But in order for this to happen, we also need to make sure that we check, see if our timer is running, right? But before we do all that, I just want to show you so that you see how this works. So if I do something like set time interval, the set interval, it takes a callback. So with the callback, I can just use arrow function. Then the arrow function, what I'll do is I'll simply call my update display method. Then on this to be called after every 1000 milliseconds. Refresh. So how do I know this is being called, right? Let's go here again. Then console log our what? Our formatted time. Going to refresh. Go. So you can see that this is being called after every 1000 milliseconds, right? Which is great. But we don't want to do that for now. We're going to use this later on to handle the updating of this live, right? So I'll just refresh to take it out. Now, what we want to do is we want to create a start timer, a function that will call whenever the timer, whenever the user click on the play, so that the timer will start, right? That's what we want. That's what we need to do. So we'll create a function. When they click on play, we'll check to see if what, if the timer is what, it's already running. Okay. If it's already running, we'll not do anything. Just return. But if it is running, sorry, if it's not running, we'll basically what, toggle the buttons. That's where what, all the toggling will come in. We'll toggle the buttons, play. Okay. So how will we handle this? We're going to create a start timer. So the function will look something like this. We check if it's running. If it's running, we don't want to do anything, so we want to return. But if it's not running, then we want to turn it's running that we set earlier on. Remember, it's running was false. We want to change that to true, so it's running. It's now going to be true. Then what we can do is we can what? We can call our toggle buttons, basically switching between play and pause. So we're going to call this button here. We're going to call the method here. And then we'll now have our time interval. So in our time interval, call that we'll put it into a variable. We'll just call our timer interval. We'll use the same set interval method again. Then we're going to use this time around. I'm not going to use the arrow function. I'm going to use a generate function here. We'll just say okay. So if the time left, we need to check if the time left is greater than 0. Okay, if it's greater than 0. What are we gonna do? We want to basically deduct. We want to keep on minusing downwards. Remember, we are counting down. We're not going upwards. Okay, we want to do a countdown, and so we're going to say time left. If we say time left will be equals to what? Time left minus 1. There's a shorthand for doing that. You can just say time left minus minus, and this will work. Okay. After minusing, then we want to update our display so that it will reflect. So update our display. I'll just call this function here, right? So that's what we're going to do here. Okay. What happens if that's not the case. So if that's not the case, then we'll just clear out the time interval, okay? So else, want to clear out the timer. So how do we do that? Say clear interval. Then we'll call our timer interval here. Call our timer interval. Then after clearing, we'll set its running to what? False. Then we can toggle our buttons again and recall this button again. This buttons again. Recall the method, basically allowing us to switch between play and pause. Okay, so this is good. Now, when we are doing this, this is when we will also do our playing. We'll also have to play our audio again. So we'll I'm just going to copy this and I'll put it there. Okay, just going to say play audio. That's a comment. So what we're going to do is just paste the code there. So remember, grab our audio file, create a new audio object, which is built-in object that exists in JavaScript. We'll pass our file to it. Then we'll call the play method on it. Okay, so just call the play, so audio.play, and then we can catch any errors that's happening. So we'll play our audio after this, right? So this is good. No issues, nothing. So I'm going to go back, refresh. I'm not having any errors or anything. Make sure we don't have any errors. It's good. Now we want to go back to our toggle buttons here. Then we can start working through the toggling of the buttons. Okay. So first of all, when we are toggling our buttons, we always want to check if our timer is running. Okay. Check if it's running. Okay. What are we going to do? If it's running, we want to basically hide our play button and show the what? The pause button. So currently we only have the play button. So what we are going to do now is, if it's running, then let's hide the play button. So play button dot class list dot add hidden. You remember the hidden class that we added, the hidden class CSS? So we are now applying CSS to our button using JavaScript. Do we get it? So if this is running, then we are going to hide our play button. And then we are now going to what? Our pause button will now add the what? Will now remove any hidden on what? Any hidden class that's there on our play but our pause button. So we'll basically take class list remove hidden. Okay. Play button. Save that. Check if we have any errors. We don't have any errors, which is good. So if that's not the case, we have else. What do we do? Go back to say play button, class list, remove hidden. This will take out any hidden class that was applied to the play button, and it will bring it back on the pause button. So we'll add the what? The hidden on the pause button, like that. Which is great. Now, this is what the toggler will do, right? Basically toggling, no issues. But then, this is all good. But right now, we still wouldn't be doing anything when a click is added, right? When a click happens. So right now, I'm going to take this out. See, now when we press on play, okay, when we press on play, what I now want to do is I'm going to call the start timer method whenever we press on play. So I'll click on whenever we press on play, we'll call the start timer here. Start timer. Let's refresh. Make sure we don't have any errors. So let's see what we got. Ooh, it's running. It's not defined. This is so let's see. Let's see. Had an error somewhere. Had a typo somewhere. Ah, we toggle play. So the error is from our toggle play. See that? Let me resize it so you can see here. I didn't type it very well. What's that? Size it back. Then so this is actually this way. Fresh. So this is now playing, but we have a problem, right? We have a problem. The countdown is not working. Why is it that? Let's check our. So it changes this to 00, but our play button still remains. As you can see, our play button still remains. It's not what we want. Okay. We basically want to take out the play button when this is playing. So let's check what did we do wrong. Also, you can see that the timer too is not getting updated. So let's see what we have. So first of all, I'm going to take a look at the play button here. Get element by play button, by ID play button. So toggle hide class hidden if it's running. Also just pause play button. That's fine. What am I missing? No, return. Pause. Set is running to true. Mm, Set this to true. Toggle the buttons. Then we'll start timer here. Set the interval. We'll check if the time left is 0. Not basically call this. Oh yeah, this is supposed to run after every what? 1,000 milliseconds. I forgot to do that. You can see that this is beginning. The countdown is now beginning to work, right? But now we have another issue because my audio is not playing. Why is it that? Let's take a look. See what we are missing. So just set everything back to 0, and then this is good. But so now that this is happening, I want to handle the reset. When we click on reset, we want to clear everything, stop the audio. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to handle my reset timer. Okay, but we are only going to handle that when we click on the reset. Okay, so we'll go here, say reset button dot what, add events listener, select, we call the reset timer, then make sure that issues, go inside our reset timer. Then what are we going to do? We're going to pause the time, and then we'll stop everything. Okay, so how do we handle that? We want to pause the timer. Let's see, let's put this inside a function. This will help. So I'll call a function, I'll call this pause timer. We are pausing the timer. We want to make sure that we set our it's running back to false. Set is running back to false. Clear our interval, our timer interval. Remember that. So timer interval, we'll call that and then we'll clear that. Then we want to toggle our play, our pause button. So just gonna put that here. Then all we need to do is we need to check the audio here. We need to check if it's playing or not. And so in order to do that, I'm going to move this outside the function here so that it becomes what a global variable. So I'll move it out and I'll put it somewhere. Okay, put it here. There we go. I'll replace it with it. Then I can now just see. I can now just check to see if it's paused. Okay, if it's not paused, then we are going to pause it. So I want to check if the audio is not paused. So this is how we do it. You can say audio not paused. Then so in programming, whenever you see the exclamation mark, it means not. It means not. Okay. It's a negative operation symbol. So we're going to call the pause what method. Then that's it. We're going to do this. Then so this looks good. We're going to pause the timer when that is clicked. So whenever we click on the pause button, we should just call the pause, right? Just call the pause anytime the pause button is clicked. So I'll just add another event listener here. Pause button dot add event listener. Select. Just call the pause. Fresh. Play. This will count down. What if I click on reset? So my reset is not doing anything right now because I did not actually put anything in the reset method, right? But let's wait. When it plays, we're going to pause it. See, I'm actually able to pause it now thanks to this method. Okay. Now, all I have to do is click on pause again, so click on play again, and then it will just continue up, right? One, two, one. So There we go. Audio was off. So what I want to do now is I want to handle the reset. That way we can reset it, clear out everything. Okay, so how do we handle the reset? We'll go back here. Stop everything when we click on the reset. So we'll just call our pause timer. Once we call the pause timer, then we'll set the time left equals to what? The initial time again. So we'll reset everything back to the default. Okay. So the initial time, set the time left to initial timer. So any other function that was using it will basically reset backwards. Then we'll update the display. This will basically call this to update what we are seeing on the counter. Then we can also stop our audio and reset everything, but we'll change our audio timer to 0 just to make sure that it's not playing, okay? So we'll set it, we'll pause it, then we'll change the current timer of the audio to 0, okay? That's the time that the audio has been played, like the time, if it has been playing for, let's say, 5 seconds, it'll just reset. So this is all good. I'll save, then I'm going to refresh, okay? I'm going to click play, as it goes. We're going to reset, it goes back, right? Great. But then, let's see. Let's add some more changes to our text. We want to change the text here when the audio start playing, right? That way it is not too static. Let's add some changes to our UI, changing the text based on whether the audio is playing, right? It's actually playing. We want to display something, right? We want to show the user something. We don't just want the text to be maintained like that. So, as you can see, so this will continue to play until the song finishes, right? Now, what I want to do is, when the audio is playing, we want to change this to Merry Christmas. Then we can even change some of the text, right? We can change this to, we can change this, we'll change this to Merry Christmas, and we'll change this to what? Mm, we wish you Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. So we'll change this text, basically. So let's go back. Where does this all come through? This all comes in here, okay? This all comes in here. Before we start playing the music, we want to change our H1, which is here. We want to change this to Merry Christmas. This is the only H1 that we have. I don't want to set IDs and things anymore, so I'm just gonna go back. I'm going to update this. So before we would add change what? Text, I'll just say document dot query selector. I'll use the H1, Then I'm just gonna say text content. We'll set that to be what? Merry Christmas. Okay. What about our subtitle? Remember, text here had a class of subtitle. We can just use query selector to grab the subtitle. Then we'll change it. We'll change the text to so document dot query selector. Add something like this. Then we can change the what text content. What wish you all the best. Okay, so let's go. In order for this to play out fast, I'm going to change the countdown here from 30 seconds to let's say 10 seconds. Go back, play. Okay, so Merry Christmas. Wish you all the best. 000. This is all good, right? So that's about it. We've done quite a lot. We've covered a lot of things from basic HTML, CSS, to JavaScript, playing around with our music, then how we can manipulate elements using what? JavaScript. So to recap, basically created our HTML document. We are using CSS inside the same document. We are not separating it. We can talk about separating it into different files later on. This makes it a lot more clean and easy for maintainability. Remember that you can target elements in CSS by just calling the elements. This will affect every element in the what code. You can target specific elements using their IDs or their classes. In this case, we're using a class. Talked about adding borders, shadows, background colors, adding buttons and styling your buttons. Talked about manipulating font sizes and font colors. Talked about hiding elements using CSS. We've also basically talked about basic HTML elements here. Okay, from H1, talked about div tag. So we're able to manipulate the text using JavaScript here. Talked about constants, which are unchangeable variables in your code. Talked about just normal variables. You could also define this using the var keyword instead of let. You could use var. This will still work. Talked about booleans, which takes in true or false. I also talked about null, which is just an empty container, and so it allows you to define variables, and then you can basically change this. This in JavaScript. In certain languages, you don't actually have this level of versatility. So because constants are not changeable, we created a new variable here, time left, and it handles a copy of what the initial time. We're able to grab elements from our document using what the DOM. So use document.get elements. You can get it by an ID or by class. You can use query selectors. All this in constants. We've talked about manipulating text using what JavaScript. Talked about functions in JavaScript. I also spoke a little bit about arrow functions, which are just short-handed way of creating functions that returns a value. Okay, so talk about if statements, conditional statements. I didn't talk much about return statements. I'll talk about that in another video. So we've covered quite a lot. Conditional statements, if statements, time interval, the audio objects in JavaScript. So we are using the set time interval to handle the live display of our counter here. It is called after every 1,000 milliseconds. Okay, so we we also covered pausing the audio and playing it from JavaScript. So we've covered quite a lot of ground. This has been fun, and Yeah, this is the full code. This is our full project. I know it took a lot of time, but the explanation was part of the reason why this took so long. So take your time, watch the video as many times as you like. You can comment any issues that you face during the creation of the during the work. If you have any issues, just comment it. I'll reply to you. Okay, and yeah, enjoy the video, like, subscribe to the channel, and I will catch you on the next one. Peace.